Hey guys, Peter here to tell you about the latest from Astralborne across the Aeons, out July 28th on Prosthetic Records. The album has 12 tracks, 55 minutes in length, and this is the band's second full-length studio album. They are a US melodic death metal band. As far as the design goes, I love the fact that this record has character, it has pillars, it has a defined design that gives you a sense of beginning, middle, and end. The album starts off with Exordium, an instrumental track with acoustic elements, finishes off with Cadence of Sorrow, an instrumental track with acoustic elements. These two are the cornerstones, the bookends of this record. If you're going from first to last, you definitely have a clear definition of what the start is and what the end is going to be. If you're listening to the album on loop, then there's a sense of going full circle. So I like the existence of these two songs with the characteristics that they offer. In the middle, you needed something in the middle, because the moment I started listening to this record, after 3-4 songs, I'm like, this album is really thick, really heavy, really condensed. I need something that's going to break this monotony, if you will, or this sense of linearity that the record has, so that I can reset my ideas, I can reset my palette sound-wise, and then prepare myself for what side B is going to have in store for me. So the album does offer you something that has these characteristics. December Flower, an In Flames cover, and Promethean Fire, an instrumental track. I'm not quite sure if these two songs are in the best place possible, because it's not normal to see a cover in the middle of an album. Normally comes at the end as a bonus track. But we needed something. So if this is what they thought they needed in order to break that record between side A and side B and give the listeners a change of pace, I'm all for it. Once again, I'm not quite sure if this was the best approach, but considering what it does for the experience of listening to this record, I'm happy with it. As far as that sound goes, it is heavy, it is thick, it is condensed. Now, adding the instrumental track in the middle, adding the cover song, adding the acoustic elements, the intro, the outro, all of these things are there to really dilute that thickness, that heaviness, that sense of concentrating the sound as much as possible. And it's smart to do it that way, because you're doing it in a very subtle way that doesn't really have a direct impact on the perception that the listener will have of this record. When you get to the end of the album, regardless of all those nuances, you're still going to say that this was a heavy and brutal record. And that's kind of the point. You want that to be in the forefront. I just don't think that there's enough with those elements alone to really thin out the sound enough that this record has a little bit more movement, that it doesn't feel so static. And I think they could have done that by allowing the melodic side of this record, the melodic side of the guitars, to be a little bit more predominant. It's not. More often than not, it really feels slightly buried. It just feels overtaken by that heaviness, by that thickness that starts off with the drums and then also impacts the guitars. And allowing the guitars and drums to have that sort of experience hides some of that more melodic side very deep within this album. Now, that doesn't happen on every single song, but it becomes predominant as far as the overall experience is concerned. So even if you have a couple of tracks where that melody jumps in a little bit more into the forefront, where it has more of a clear impact, once again, it becomes a nuance and not enough to really reset your palette of the overall thickness that the sound has. So this is an album that has quality in the sound, but the production behind it gives it a little bit more of a rough feel. It's almost like you're listening to a melodic death metal record with a lot of black metal elements or even black metal production, which is totally fine if that's what they're going for. I just feel like when I look at the material on this album, when I look at the songs, the execution of the songs, the construction of the songs, the overall guitar sound, the melodic elements of the guitars, how heavy the drums are, the combination of the two, I honestly felt like this album could be a little bit more palpable had it had a more defined production. And I'm not talking about overproducing this record. That's not what I'm talking about. I think the record still needs to have a certain edge. It still needs to have that certain raw feel, because I feel like that's part of the DNA of the band and that needs to stay intact. But giving a better shape to the drum sound, not allowing the drums to bleed as much into the guitars as they do, and then allowing the more melodic side of the guitars to be more driven, to be more penetrating, to have a little bit more room to breathe, not only in the solos, but overall a little bit more room to breathe. You can still allow the other side of the guitar sound to be rugged, to be thick, to be heavy, and it's fine because you have a way of balancing those worlds out. Right now, the album at times feels a little bit lopsided from a soundscape point of view, and that overall thickness really takes over and takes control. But when you have too much of that, it becomes really hard to digest 55 minutes, even with all the other nuances that they incorporated into this album to make the experience slightly more palpable. I honestly see more in this record than what I got from it. The production could have helped it more, but if they wanted to go for a more rugged look, a more blackened feel into their death metal, into their melodic death metal, then the album hits the mark. I just don't see this as necessarily the right way, at least not from my point of view and not from my personal taste. I still enjoy the tracks. I just wanted more out of them because I saw more within them. Now, the vocals are very consistent, very cavernous, great delivery, harsh delivery. A lot of that thickness also comes from the vocals, and definitely a lot of the heaviness comes from the vocals. But I like the fact that they stayed consistent. They helped shape the songs, and it helps give a sense of continuity to the way these tracks came together. And it was definitely a way of giving quality to also the lyrical content. The vocals on this album have nothing for me to say about them as far as negative elements are concerned, because I honestly really enjoy them. I like the darkness and the raspiness that they have, which once again, if you have that approach on the vocal side, it allows you to be a little bit more melodic on the backdrop. So overall, the vocal performance matches the experience and matches the atmosphere of this album. It's heavy, it's thick, it's condensed, it's rugged, because that's what the record is all about. I wanted something a little bit more polished. It wasn't the case, but I still enjoy what I got. I just think that this is an album that for me, I can listen to from start to end, but then I need to kind of walk away from it before I come back again to it, because it was just a lot for me to process in one sitting. As far as favorite songs are concerned, I want to start off with Skybreaker. The heaviness on top of the more melodic guitar drive works really well. The melodic side of the guitars on this track pop a little bit better than in some other songs, and that allows the track itself to have a lot of fluidity. It allows the track to have a lot of character. There's definitely a darker tone to this song, and you see that darker tone come across in the more melodic side of the track, specifically in the chorus. It's a little bit heavier, a little bit thicker, a little bit meatier in the verses, but then a little bit more brighter in the chorus. The guitar solos also help infuse melody into the track and allow this song to have great characteristics. This track is closer sound-wise to what I wish the whole album was more consistent to, which is allowing the melody to take a little bit more of a bigger role, allowing you to see more of the difference between the heavier side of the band and the more melodic side of the band, and not kind of blend those two worlds or over blend those two worlds. This song has a lot of different parts to it, but parts that flow really well one into the next. After this song, I have to mention December Flower. I mean, this In Flames cover is really good. It's really good for two main reasons. One, the moment you start listening to it, you know you're listening to an In Flames cover. You know you're listening to December Flower, because the characteristics, the DNA of the original track are still there. It's just that this is a heavier version of that song. It has almost similar production to the original, but it has more sound. It has thicker sound, thicker guitars, thicker drums, heavier vocals. It's pretty much Astralborne doing In Flames. I mean, when you look at the rest of the record, you see a lot of characteristics bleeding into this track, but you still see the In Flames DNA there. And I felt like the In Flames DNA was there in the melodic side, because this song really allows them to be more melodic, and they didn't hide it in this song. They allowed that melodic side of the track to be in the forefront, to be part of the song, of the execution of this cover as it is in the original. So these reasons are why I really enjoy this cover, and I thought that this was a great song to reset the experience of listening to the album. The downside of it is that when you listen to this song, you start to wonder why there isn't more songs with the same production style, mixing style, pedigree, if you will, across the entire record. Why is the rest of the album not as consistently sonically attached to how they designed this track, and it's a little bit more, like I said, thicker, bigger, condensed? So this track does well within the record. is a great cover, but at the same time also makes you look at the other songs slightly differently. Last but not least, this is one of the greatest songs that this album offers across the eons. 90 plus minutes of pure epicness. First of all, I love the acoustic elements throughout this track. I love when they pop into the forefront and they become predominant. I love when they are a layer, a melodic layer within this track. This song is an absolute roller coaster ride. It's made of incredibly different moments, peaks and valleys, ups and downs. It's such an incredible track all around. Very guitar focused, very guitar driven, very guitar layered, very sound layered, very textured, a lot to offer sound wise. Vocally is a little bit more consistent, but musically this track is off the charts. It's an absolute epic song of epic proportions in terms of size, duration, length, and everything that comes within it. I love the fact that it also has a dark sound experience to it. It feels not necessarily ominous, but there is just a sense of something something dark, of something not good. Like there's no pot of gold at the end of the rainbow when you listen to this song. You just feel like you're going through all these different emotions, you're going through all of these different momentums, but at the end, there's still not a positive result. It just has that vibe, it just has that ambiance to it. But it's a magnificent song. One of the best, if not the best song on the entire record. I love this track. You lose track of time. You don't care that it's 9 minutes because it sounds amazing. It feels amazing. Really well put together. Really well constructed. This is it. Astralborne with Across the Eons out July 28th on Prosthetic Records. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.